So my name is Shae, and I have a very rare autoimmune disease called dermatomyositis. Incidence is approximately 1 in 100,000. So not particularly common. Essentially, it is an inflammatory skin and muscle condition, which renders me photosensitive, meaning I'm basically allergic to the sun. So if I go outside, the inflammation in my body can increase to the point where my muscles can waste away and my skin will just go completely red. So that started approximately mid 2019 and it was really gradual. So I remember just being at work one day and I came in from being outside and then it just looked like I was really sunburnt. And this was in maybe spring. So I thought I just hadn't put sunscreen on that day. I didn't think much of it, but it just didn't go away. And this is when I worked at a Whole Foods store. So people were recommending things like celery juice to me and other cleansers. And I tried that for a few months. I wasn't in pain or anything, but I just noticed that it was getting worse and my skin became more and more red. And then it spread to my hands as well, which I thought might just be effective working in hospitality. Didn't think too much of it. And I went to a few doctors and they just said, oh, it's nothing, prescribed me some medication for acne. And that did nothing. They prescribed about 10 different creams and ointments, didn't do anything. And I was really confused. Once again, didn't think too much of it, but then it got into summer and my entire face was red. And then other parts of my body became really, really red and really swollen. So I went back to my GP at the time and said, something's not quite right here. I think I need to see a specialist or something. And they said, that's fine. If you want to go through the public system, that's going to be about a 2-year waiting list. So I signed up to that and it only lasted about 2 months before I went, fuck this, I just need to figure out what's going on. So I paid about $500 to see a specialist dermatologist. That was for one appointment. I was not happy. So I went and they took one look at my face and said, this is really abnormal. I think it's pretty serious. So we're going to do like a full body workup basically. So I had about 14 vials of blood taken when I went to hospital. I had skin biopsies. So they, sliced a couple of pieces of me off and sent it off to a lab. And then they came back to me with what was actually an incorrect diagnosis. So they told me I had lupus, which is also not great. So essentially I was relieved that I had a diagnosis, even though it wasn't a great diagnosis. But then I was referred to another specialist and they told me that diagnosis was wrong. And I didn't really know what to do with that information. So I just started the medication they gave me. That went on for about a year. Nothing worked. Then, I should backtrack here a little bit. I originally paid to see a dermatologist because I'd researched what the condition I actually have, dermatomyositis, because it just popped up one day. I think I researched every skin condition under the sun, pun not intended. But I saw dermatomyositis in a few Google images on these really obscure skin websites. And I went, I think I've got that. And that's what prompted me to go to the GP and say, I think I have this. And they said, you don't have that. You're too young. No one gets that. I don't even think they really knew what it was because they Googled it on WebMD. But I thought I had that and I was really convinced. And because I saw how horrible it was and how debilitating it can be, that's why I went, fuck, okay, I'm just going to pay and see a specialist. And then they said, no, you don't have it. Was relieved. So another specialist that said, you do have it. And then I think I've trialed about 15 different medications in the 2 years since I've been diagnosed with firstly lupus and then this condition, and nothing has worked so far. So that's been a little bit concerning. And I was at the hospital yesterday, even just asking, what do we do moving forward here? And they said, well, the medication we know would work for you, you're not entitled to because you're not sick enough. So essentially we just have to monitor you. And if you get bad enough to the point where you can't walk or swallow or lift your arms above your head, then you'll be entitled to it, because I don't really have 20 grand to pay every month for an infusion. So it's very frustrating and very annoying. And that's where I'm currently at.
How treatable is your condition?
There's a lot of different medications you can take. Essentially, it boils down to immunosuppressants. So, as the name suggests, suppresses your immune system. Autoimmune diseases, pretty much your immune system gets so overwhelmed that it attacks not only bad cells or infections, like when you get sick, but healthy cells as well. So I've been prescribed many immunosuppressants. For some people, they work really well. Unfortunately, though, they do come with some pretty heinous side effects like hair loss. So prior to being diagnosed, my hair was the longest it had ever been, and I was really happy with it because I fucking hate having short hair. So my hair fell out when I started taking it, and became really difficult to sleep as well. That was fine. I was willing to try anything to see if it would work. So that was about 7 pills a day that I was taking, as well as steroid cream for my face, my hands, my elbows, my joints. And in some people that works really well. In other people, it doesn't work at all. There's a treatment where you can receive infusions of healthy antibodies, so from multiple blood donors. It's very expensive, and that, from what I understand, is the most effective way to treat this condition. But because I'm not sick enough, because I can still move and swallow and stand up, I don't qualify for that. That being said, though, everyone is completely different, and the line of treatment for everyone can be completely different as well. So for some people, they'll get really lucky and go into remission, which just means you still have the disease, but it's not active. For some reason, they say it's about 5 years at least before that might happen to you. So there are a few treatments available, but they all come at a cost, not just financial, but physically and mentally. So there are options, but nothing sufficient. I don't think that pharmaceutical companies are exactly motivated to research this disease, because, individuals that have a chronic illness is so profitable. So a lot of the drugs that I've been taking, they've been out since the 90s, and there hasn't been a lot of headway there. So treatment, what I'm told for myself is just stay inside from 9 till 6 every day and eat healthily. I'm a raw vegan, so I only eat fruits and vegetables. I drink 4 liters of water a day. I actually received, this is a bit of a side note, I thought Western medicine was going to fail me. I didn't see any way forward. The way that I've seen this disease play out in others is just more toxic medication, and you're just going to get worse over time. I didn't want to buy into that. So I started looking into alternative therapies, and there is a doctor in the States who specializes in the reversal of autoimmune diseases, and she reversed her own lupus, which is what I was originally diagnosed with, and there is a lot of overlap between lupus and this condition. And she treated herself via a raw vegan diet, and I actually asked last year for some support in potentially joining one of her programs that she runs virtually. And I had so much anxiety about making this post, because up until then I didn't really talk about my condition, because I don't want it to define me. And now whenever I see friends who I haven't seen in a while, it's the first thing they ask me how my health is doing, which on the one hand is lovely, but it's really difficult to try and take on this new identity as a sick person. So I made a big post about it. I'd been incredibly suicidal, my mental health was horrible, and I just felt like there were no other options, especially because the options that would work I couldn't afford or I didn't qualify for. And my friends actually donated to a GoFundMe I set up, and they raised over $5,000 in 10 hours, which I never would have expected. And I was able to join this program with her that ran over 6 weeks, where they monitored what I was eating every day, what my mood was like, what my sleep was like. And it did help. my condition. It was the most helpful thing I've done. But it was 6 weeks and that was it. And after that drop off, my mental health became bad again, and it became really hard to stick to because this was a kilo of raw food each day. No sugar or no oils, no no sauce, no flavoring, 4 liters of water, a cup of chia seeds, and if I was feeling naughty, I might have some cacao or something. So that's worked, but you're not going to read about that in any literature that you see when you Google this condition. So I found that to be most effective. But in terms of conventional treatments, it's very hit and miss.
So you're not very hopeful that a cure will be found?
I think a cure it's a tricky term. I don't think there will be a pill or a cream or some kind of easily consumable drug that will come to be in a few years that will make me healthy again. I think I'm definitely struggling with accepting that I have this condition and refusing to accept that this is going to be my life. I don't want to live in literal darkness forever. So I think focusing on alternative therapies like a raw vegan diet and reducing stress and just being positive could make me a lot better, because it has reversed the conditions of many people with autoimmune diseases. But a lot of people think that sounds like complete bullshit, but it's the only thing I really have. So when my mental health is struggling, like it is currently, it's hard for me to sort of hold out for that. But I do hope that potentially it could reverse my condition. It just has never been done before. So I'm in two minds about that.
What do you wish people knew about your condition?
Well, when I say I'm allergic to the sun, people, I don't think they really appreciate how difficult that is, because it's not just the sun, it's UV rays. So I should be fully clothed wearing sunscreen indoors because UVs are emitted from light bulbs, television screens, computer screens. If I'm working all day and I'm on my computer, my hands will literally swell up because of the UV that's being emitted from the screen. So it's not simple. And when I'm going out anywhere, I have to think about what the UV rating is going to be. I have an app on my phone. Anything above 3 is bad. And at the moment in Australian summer, it's 14 every day. So if I'm invited somewhere, I have to think about where we're going to be. Will it be indoors? Will it be near windows? What can I wear? I feel very self-conscious about the way I look at this half of the year, which is probably one of the lesser thought of side effects of this condition, just how much it impacts your self-esteem and mental health. I pretty much don't date throughout summer because I don't want to rock up covered in head to toe, long sleeved dress with gloves and a hat and massive sunglasses and a 50, plus SPF umbrella. That doesn't seem particularly sexy. So I just wish people maybe were a little bit more mindful of the fact that it's a little bit harder than just staying indoors.
How has your condition impacted your mental health?
It's been really, really difficult. I haven't had the best mental health prior to this anyway. So I've had anxiety and depression since I was 11. I had a very traumatic childhood, and I was kicked out of home at 19, have been in share houses since then. So I've always been very self-reliant and a very autonomous person. And what was most terrifying for me in terms of this diagnosis is the fact that I might not be able to take care of myself one day and that I would have to ask for help. And I have so much anxiety surrounding that, because I don't feel like I have a lot of people I could rely on. I have an amazing network of friends, but if I wasn't able to do that, I'm not really sure where I would be. And I've really struggled with being abused growing up, and I honestly believe that's what triggered my condition. There is a huge correlation between autoimmune diseases and trauma, and in a way, realizing that felt kind of validating, that what I'd been through amounted to something tangible. Of course, there are so many side effects physically of having poor mental health, but this felt like something that I could really sort of latch onto as, yeah, well, what I'd been through has been pretty horrible, and now I have this disease, but it's, I don't know, it's just not what I would ever have wanted, and not what I hadn't even heard of something like this. I didn't know something like this was possible. It sounds stupid. It sounds fake. So I have a lot of anger at myself for being sick. And I feel like if I had have processed my traumas and dealt with things slightly differently, then maybe I wouldn't be sick. So what I suppose I'm trying to emphasize is a lot of people with these conditions, it's a result of something that they've been through, but on top of that, they're really hard on themselves for being ill, and the impact that that has not only on them but those around them is pretty catastrophic too. So I feel validated, but I'm pretty pissed off about it at the same time. I can't blame myself, but I still do. I've always struggled with self-worth, and my self-esteem has been related to things that, or not even, just I've relied on things like getting good grades or being a very likable person to validate me, because I didn't get those things growing up. And I feel like if I had have identified healthier coping mechanisms earlier on, that maybe it wouldn't have snowballed into what it is now. Because autoimmune diseases, the inflammation that builds up your body to the point where you get a disease like this, that doesn't just happen overnight. It takes years. It takes a really long time. So whilst there's no point or merit in going, okay, what if 5 years ago I saw my psych more regularly, or I don't know, ate more healthily, or I went for more runs in the park and meditated, that I wouldn't have this condition. But it's something I still consider every single day, because I'm so unhappy with how my life is currently that it's hard not to reflect on those things and wonder how I could have done things differently.
How do you manage a condition outdoors?
Well, when I wake up in the morning, I check the SunSmart app that I have on my phone. If the UV is above 3, or it will be above 3 at a certain point during the day, I need to wear protective clothing. So I always take gloves with me that are 50 SPF, so SunSmart gloves. I also have an SPF 50 plus umbrella that I'll take. I wear a mask all the time. Even when we came out of lockdown, I just like to have that covering on my face. I have to wear sunscreen all the time, reapply it, and I pretty much don't wear dresses, skirts, shorts, open-toed shoes or anything anymore. So it definitely just impacts the way I dress. And if we're talking about that in terms of things I'm meant to consume throughout the day, health-wise, diet-wise, I'll make sure I bring my own food with me, because raw food is a little bit hard to come by, and I'll just try to map out where I'm going. And ideally, I'll go out before 8 a.m. or after 5:30 p.m.
What's the hardest part about your condition?
The anxiety about what my future is going to look like. This is something I've spoken to a lot of friends about and have tried to unpack with my psychologist a lot, because I know how horrible it can be and that there's no real timeline and there aren't really a lot of effective treatments, that I don't know if I am going to wake up tomorrow and not be able to move properly, or not be able to swallow, or not be able to be indoors with the light on without getting really sick. And people tell me to not think about that because I'm quite fine now, and I'm very lucky that I'm as functional as I am. And I am grateful for that, but I'm also terrified because I don't know what to do with my life now as a result. Career plans and travel plans, and even plans with what I want to do in terms of relationships, it's all been impacted. So I'm not really sure what I'm doing now or who I am now. So I've definitely suffered quite a pretty substantial loss of identity and self. So that's what I find most difficult at the moment, just where I'm going.
Does nature and the outdoors still make you happy despite your condition?
Yes. I love hiking, and I was actually trekking in Peru right before I got diagnosed. So when I came back, a couple of things happened. Trekking in Peru, it's not exactly a walk in the park. Trekking for 19 kilometers a day in incredibly high altitude wasn't the easiest thing on my body. But when I came back to Australia, my boyfriend and I broke up, and that was incredibly upsetting. And I just finished my degree as well. So I was at a bit of a crossroads there, and there were all these things happening, and I think that was the trigger point for my condition, just getting really stressed and overwhelmed. And because I've relied on nature for, pleasure and meditative purposes and exercise, it's something I do really miss. So I still do it. I love doing the 1,000 steps, for example. But I have to make sure it's in the evening or in the very, very, very early morning. So I do still love nature, but it's a lot harder for me to enjoy it than it used to be.
Is it a coincidence you like vampires?
Yeah, so I've always been obsessed with vampires. I actually brought some fangs with me today. I had fangs made. So when I was 8, I saw Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, to the point where I actually had my aunt make me one of the vampire outfits, Alira, the pink one. And I'd just jump off my desk like this, hissing, because I thought it was so cool. And I love Dracula, and I just think vampires are great. I did have a huge Twilight phase as well. So aesthetically, I've always really enjoyed the vamp situation. Did I want to become one? No. But maybe I'll become immortal or something and it'll be all right. But I do really want to get a vampire tattoo soon as well. Might as well just own it at this point.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside your illness?
Sure. So I work full-time in education. I have an arts degree, majoring in literature and philosophy. I've studied at universities in London, Japan, and I've studied abroad in Germany too. I'm a musician. I was a drummer in a metal band, a shoegaze band. I'm currently doing vocals because I want to learn how to scream in a metal band as well. I'm vegan. I love exercise. I love being outdoors. I love dark satirical comedy. I love vampire films and TV shows. And I love feminist literature as well. I love reading. I love books.
Do you feel isolated by the rarity of your condition?
Yes and no. There are a lot of support groups online, so I've connected with a few people personally, or at least have identified quite a few people with my condition. And the idea of support groups is for support, right? But I find them to be incredibly depressing. When I made a post about having this condition, a friend of mine messaged me and said, holy shit, my old housemate actually has this, and I know how rare it is and I know how bad it is. I'd love to get you into contact with her. And that was really, really sweet. And her disease is a lot worse than mine. So when she messaged me, I found her responses to be quite confronting and negative. She pretty much said, your mobility is going to completely go, your hair is going to fall out. Don't expect much in terms of what you had planned or who you thought you were going to be in the future, because it's all going to be taken away. And if you can accept that earlier on, the better off you'll be. And everyone processes these kinds of things differently. So that I have no disrespect for her or am unhappy with that response, but it was confronting. And being in those groups, that's what it's like. People are just focusing on what they've lost or how difficult each day is. And you get the very rare posts that are successful in that someone's gotten a little bit better, or they've recovered, and they've been doing physiotherapy and they've regained some movement and mobility. But the majority of the posts I see are from people just mourning the life that they wish they still had. So I've made a concerted effort to not look at those support groups too much, because that just made my mental health even worse.